Coming up on Don't Ask When, sparks fly. We explain what's going on with Rev 0.6 and why some people think they're fugly, and what we did in Rev 0.7 to make them sexy. And of course, we answer your questions.
One of the few things that I have in common with Jane Goodall.
That and a lot more on Don't Ask When, number 7. So this update starts a couple hours south in San Diego. As you can see next to him is a metal plate that shows what they cut out from the previous Rev, Alpha Rev 6. And we're making a lot of little adjustments to them. We made a bunch of tweaks aesthetically. But before he begins doing that, he has to upload the file and route out a sort of protective path with wood. While we were waiting for him to do that, we discovered that they have a little shop dog here. And what's really cool about this dog is it's very intelligent. It's so smart that it gets the treat before it actually does the trick, and then it'll also do the trick too. So really clever dog here, and it really just kind of helps keep things kind of light and friendly in a laser machine shop. It's really cool there. Now you can see them cutting through this piece of plywood with the laser cutter. They're starting out with the temples. We're going to fast forward this a bit, but I think you guys get the idea. But it's just really cool to see lasers cutting something other than metal sometimes. So what you're seeing here are the waste products of this. We have no use for these. I've been using them as paperweights. They look kind of cool. So if anybody wants one, just hit us up and we'll figure out a way to get one to you. So he's adjusting some of the parameters. In certain cases, he's just trying to focus the light correctly for this material. He's also adjusting the distance that the head is from the metal. You have to use different distances and different focal lengths depending on your material, how thin it is, and how fast you want to cut. So now we're jumping into here. You can see the new frame fronts being cut. This is for one of the frame styles. For some of the folks who were pre-order customers who did our lock-in offer, this is based on one of the frame styles that we shipped out. All of those frames that we shipped out were references for future frame styles. We really do take people's feedback seriously. This frame style is actually sourced from a friend of the company and one of our advisors over at Clear Vision Optical. A big difference between LaForge and some of the other AR glasses or smart glasses companies is we're really trying to limit the use of plastics in this, and we're also trying to increase the perceived value, the feel in hand with these. So that's why our frames are using a combination of metal and a variety of plastics. We really want something that you can take to your optometrist and adjust, and us using metal gives us these options. One, it's really cheap. It makes it really easy for us to find redundant suppliers, but we can use its mechanical properties, its strength properties in very specific ways, but we also use as a bit of a heat sink as well for the electronic components and the battery. And there's even certain really interesting failure modes that are engineered with this. So let's say the battery goes critical and needs to expand, it will actually have that room to expand. Additionally, metal gives us the ability to make this eyewear repairable. For those of us who wear eyewear, familiar with people who do wear eyewear, these things break from time to time. People accidentally step on them. Things just get kind of worn out. So you can actually repair these. So we did take a very close look at repairability, and we've been tweaking some things mechanically and in the assembly over the past few weeks to make them such that they are repairable. What you're looking at here is, of course, at the end, once this is all over with, we take the parts that we want, we separate it from the waste parts, and the waste parts get discarded. I actually have a bunch of the waste parts here on my desk because I don't know what to do with them. So just like with the wooden parts, if anybody on the pre-order list wants to have some of these components, let us know and we'll get them shipped out to you. Moving on to the final product that came out of this, which is Alpha Rev.7. You can see it here on the turntable. We worked very meticulously to sort of fix these in terms of their aesthetic. And what you can see here now is the culmination of this on the turntable. This is Alpha Rev 0.7. These are not totally perfect, but it does represent a wholesale redesign of the eyewear. What most of you guys may not know is that over 2018, I restructured the company so that we can improve communication with our suppliers. Part of that gave us the added benefit of being able to do quick turnarounds of these prototypes. So for example, the amount of time expended between Alpha Rev 0.6 being built and 0.7 being built was about 4 or 5 weeks, knowing that most of that was just us waiting on parts to get here. Let's take a closer look at this. What you guys can see here is that there are some minor fitment issues. We know the causes of those basically we had to move some things around. This was a new sort of design thesis on how to assemble this. Some of the fitment issues we have are just due to minor miscommunication, very minor errors. And we say minor errors, some of this stuff is just off by a millimeter to give you guys a frame of reference of how thin this is. Let's take a closer look, by the way. Alpha Rev 0.6, we were basically going at, I think, about 1.5 millimeters, and now we're down to 1 millimeter on the metal parts. We may push it a little bit thinner. And of course, we're saving weight too. Alpha Rev 0.6 was a little bit controversial prototype that we had made, not only for some prospective investors that we were talking to, but some of our followers or people commenting here. My favorite comment from the previous video was fugly glasses. And I'm going to tell you what, I won't exactly use those words, but I'm not going to say you were wrong. With that previous prototype, it was really about us using a new supplier base, fitting things together, test fitting it, but we were also up against a hard deadline, so we really wanted to make sure that when we showed investors this prototype, that everything would actually fit together. With some more time, that's how we got to Alpha Rev 7, and we've tightened up those dimensions quite a bit. So this is just part of our iterative process. Sometimes we make prototypes that you guys see just to prove one or two things. Right now with these later Alpha Revs, it's really about proving several things at the same time, and mostly the focus has been on a proof of assembly. Other changes or cost cutting that you guys are going to see between Alpha Rev 7 and Alpha Rev 8 is that these hinges that we've been using have just been bolts and bent metal. And that's not going to be something that we continue to do. It's because we're having a little bit of trouble finding a US-based hinge solution that was cost effective. So this just gives you guys a bit of a flavor of the things that we have to go through to get these things to look the way that people want, and also why we aren't rushing things into production. There's a lot of companies that are out there that just don't exist anymore for multiple reasons, but I do believe part of it is they had poor aesthetics and poor product integration. So there you have it. That's Alpha Rev 0.7 spinning around here. A lot of hard work has gone into it. We're going to really dig deeper on tightening up these dimensions, getting a bit better fit and finish with Alpha Rev 0.8. And that'll probably be the final release candidate in terms of looking at proof of assembly before we start shipping those out. We will get to the age-old question of when very, very soon, perhaps the next episode. So now let's push it over to me again so maybe we can get to some of these questions from our viewers.
And like a bad dream, I'm back. We're here to answer your questions this time. As you guys know, we do Q&A, so let's hop right into it. So this first one's from Adam DB. So I've raised this question before in the forum. Because we've had to measure our pupillary distance, it's safe to assume the glasses are going to be precision devices to some degree. How will a forge make certain that each pair of glasses is going to fit the owner and work no matter which way he or she prefers to wear them? What are the margins within which the glasses will function properly? So Adam, this is a good question. So first, when it comes to pupillary distance, that's literally the distance between these two pupils here. And what we're really doing with that is, one, we're just making sure that the center of the lenses are aligned in the center of aligned with the central axis of your eyes. They currently do this already when you get prescription eyewear. And what we're doing is we're working within those existing frameworks. So without all the technical jargon, what it means is this: we're asking for your PD because if we slide things over a little bit too much for some people, the image itself, the virtual image, will become blurry, even though you can still see things at 20/20. So to really get at this, one, what we're doing is we're going to be creating a bunch of different lens profiles for people who have different PDs. So we're going to be starting out with people who basically have, let's say, within the 60% of the population. If we look at a bell curve, what's that middle 60%? And then with time, we're going to be adding more and more of those. When we first launched this product or first discussed it, it was actually going to be something a little different. We really thought that people's prescription was going to be more so the bigger variable, but as we've gotten through and started making these and testing them, you're exactly correct. It's that. In terms of the margins of error around those, it's going to be basically plus or minus a millimeter, maybe plus or minus a half a millimeter. We still have to test that out. But when we talk about basically preference of wearing them, with most people, it's not going to be the PD that comes to their preference of wearing them. It's going to come down to what's known as the seg height, or basically how high or low they need to be worn on someone's face. And that, when the margin of error is for us in the neighborhood of about 5 ± 5 millimeters, which is pretty huge. That's why we also have the nose pads. The nose pads on all prescription eyewear, where it's adjustable, it actually allows the glasses to be worn up a little bit higher or worn down a little bit lower. And if you're an accountant, or like your dad's an accountant or a lawyer, if you wear them down here, you ain't gonna see anything. All right. So that's a very good question there. Let's move on to the next one. This next one's from Valerie. I was very excited to read about your technology and can see so many opportunities in it. I was especially excited as I have mild prosopagnosia, and I can foresee a day when I wear a pair of glasses that will tell me the name of the person I am greeting and save embarrassment, as I meet literally hundreds of people a year in my job. It would be a great boon. I have a strabismus and lazy eye, and I was all set to send you my prescription order a pair to try and get some ahead of the game, when my optician said, be sure to check they can work where one eye has suppressed vision, and of course I read your web pages, and of course you don't at the moment. I realize you probably have several hundred wants lined up for future releases, but do you have any intention in the future to address conditions like mine? I can see the problem. If you put AR in my dominant eye, I may not be able to see what's in front of me. If you put it in my non-dominant eye, I may not be able to see it at all. I can see that this is non-trivial, but I'd be grateful for any idea if you think there is a way forward here. All the best, Valerie. Valerie, this is a very good question. You bring up some very good points here, and we're going to hop right into it. So for those of you who don't know, prosopagnosia, and again, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, basically means you suffer from a form of face blindness. You have a hard time remembering or recognizing faces. And believe it or not, some of my closest friends and family members know that I too also suffer from this. It was something that I first realized at a young age, but I kind of thought that it was just kind of normal, and it was sort of, I could describe it like this. I would ask some of my friends, hey, have you ever seen someone the first time, and then when you see them the second time, they look like a totally different person, but you know it's the same? And most of my friends were like, actually, no, I've never seen that before. So for me, this is something I discovered a couple years ago. And what I also discovered is it's also one of the few things that I have in common with Jane Goodall, Brad Pitt, and Stephen Fry. So this is something that a lot of people kind of suffer from and deal with. It's not necessarily detrimental, but it does lead to a lot of embarrassing moments. So again, imagine looking at a picture of yourself and not realizing it's actually you, or being highly skeptical it's actually you, or meeting someone that you've met with and had conversations with for months on end and stuff like that, and you actually say, man, I've actually never met that person before. So what I can tell you is, when it comes to doing things, when it comes to facial identification and remembering faces, that is definitely something that we're going to be doing out of the box. We're going to talk a bit more in the future about some of these pivots that we're doing towards AI, but we'll save that for like next for episode number 8 or something like that. And when it comes to having things like strabismus or amblyopia, lazy eye, all these sort of different things that either deal with the fact that your muscles in one of your eyes are too strong or too weak, not developed, or things like that, where basically your eye sort of goes off to one side, that's an area that we're steering clear of for multiple reasons. The first one is it then puts us into a different category of medical device. Here in the United States, prescription eyewear is basically regulated the same way as like a cane is, or orthopedic shoes. It's just something to basically help you deal with that situation. It's non-curative. It's also non-invasive. When we start talking about, hey, maybe getting things pointed into people's eyes to maybe help them see. I know you weren't necessarily going that way, but a lot of people have asked us that question, hey, can these help me see if I have severely, like really, really bad vision or something like that? That's an area we're staying away from because it just adds another layer of complexity when it comes to regulation, and it really starts to put us in a different category. It really makes it really hard for us to market the company to investors. So is it something that we'll do eventually? Yeah, I would certainly love to do something for people who have severely deteriorated vision or something like that. But with a lot of people, again, who suffer from amblyopia or lazy eye, typically the lazy eye is actually not that well developed either. So it's going to be a challenge to really stimulate cells that actually were never stimulated from birth or something like that. Very good question, Valerie. I really like that one. So let's move on. The next one is from Andrew. And I say one lightly. It's not one. It's like the next 10 questions are from Andrew. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something really special for Andrew. We're actually going to just answer all of these really, really quickly. So you're going to just see me say, hey, here's a question, here's the answer. So let's get right into it. So Andrew, will you offer custom prescription lenses for those with Ireland's syndrome? I'm going to be candid with you. I don't know what that is, but I'll take a look at it and we'll get you an answer to that in the next episode. Okay? The next one, battery life. So battery life that we're anticipating is all-day battery life. All-day battery life doesn't mean 24 hours. It just means the days that the hours a day that most people are up. So we basically simulated and tested. We're going to be somewhere around the 13 to 16 hour sort of battery life. And of course, like with anything electronic, your mileage will vary based on how you use it. So if you're doing a lot of stuff with that's camera-based AI, the battery life's gonna be much shorter. If it's mostly notifications, or if you turn off a lot of notifications, it's gonna be longer. The next one, will eye tracker technology be used in control systems? For what we're doing, no. That's not in my vision of the best use of eye tracking technology. I want to use eye tracking technology more so as a diagnostic tool over time. So imagine you're driving a car and we can tell if you're asleep, if you're drunk, if you're high, if you're having a seizure, something like that, then we communicate to the car to maybe pull over. Or we notice that, hey, maybe you're diabetic, or maybe we can eventually be able to see, oh, there's something in your eye. Could that be glaucoma? Could those be cataracts? And we can basically track that data over time and then give you a referral, or just say, hey, maybe you want to get your eyes checked. That's what we're doing with that. Will you do a Riddick goggles version? Probably not. But maybe. It just really depends. We got to get the first ones back. The next one here, what third-party apps will be available, and how many do you expect to come on to the project and when are you in alpha, beta, and beta plus? So basically, what third-party apps are going to be available? I can tell you right now, absolutely none. At the beginning, it's going to be basically third-party apps. We're going to leave that up to third-party developers. What we're doing is basically getting those the apps that are used most common to just sort of work out of the box. I know that may sound similar, but when we talk about third-party apps, third-party mods, whatever you want to call them, we're really saying that those are things that the third party, be they Facebook, be they Google, be they some really cool startup or really clever startup that we haven't even heard about yet because it's in stealth, that's going to be on them. But for us, we're building out core functionality that all of them will ship with. So these will be things like teleprompter, clock, boring shit like that. But what we're going to really do that's going to be really cool is do some really interesting AI integrations that are going to be proprietary to us. So think instant song recognition, as you mentioned before, facial recognition, and there's some other things that we just haven't spoken about yet because we're still, developing those. Next, we're going to go really quickly. Will a homebrew option be available? Probably not. I think when you're saying homebrew, I think you mean something that someone could just sort of tinker with. And I would say in the early days, no, because we really do need to figure out what's going to be the market response, or sorry, not the market response, the competitor response. We're part of the eyewear industry, and they tend to be very aggressive with taking a look at new technology once it exists. Before then, they basically pan it, by the way. They just think that it's not worth it, it's never going to exist, no matter what it is. The folks who invented, for example, transition lenses, they had a lot of hell to go through when they first got started. So a homebrew option will be available, but it's not even worth talking about right now. It's going to be years and years down the road for something like that. Next one, can images from the camera system be viewed anywhere on the HUD? No, we're going to do something a bit more clever when it comes to camera operation. And the reason why I bring that up is we want to, and it sort of goes back to what we're talking about with eye tracking a bit earlier. We want to do something a bit more creative in the sense of I don't think it's necessarily that great to have a viewfinder, a virtual viewfinder on that is basically showing exactly what you're seeing on top of it. So just imagine a picture-in-picture where you have one source in the big picture and the same source in a smaller picture. It's redundant, and we're going to avoid that. But we do have something that we're going to try out afterward. But again, that's going to be a little bit later on. We're doing everything we can to basically finish up this fundraise to get this next thing into production so we can start with those really cool things. The next one here is, will there be an option to attach a more powerful device? When you say attach a more powerful device, I'm not sure if you mean by phone, And if you mean by phone, how do you mean attach? Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, whatever. We're trying to make it platform agnostic. If you mean attach another device, like could you attach more processing power literally to the eyewear? We would say definitely just revert to the phone. Those devices don't exist yet. But what I will also say is that most of the stuff that happens on board the eyewear is literally just there to render the image and to convey data. There is very little signal processing going on board, and that's how we're getting these really cool, really long battery life expectations here. The next one. Would this system be in a similar format, be able to play augmented reality games with the glasses? And I would say maybe, but when you're talking about AR games, first of all, there aren't that many that exist. And two, remember that we're lightweight AR in a literal and a figurative sense. Basically, my vision, if you want to take a look at what we view AR as at LaForge, is everyone knows that game, or at least I hope you know that game, called Grand Theft Auto. And what we're basically saying is your life is actually everything that's going on the screen. And what we're trying to do is give you the heads up display from that game. So for example, you go to Whole Foods, you go to Gelson's, whatever, Harris Teeter, Piggly Wiggly, whatever grocery store you like. And when you swipe your card, you actually see this is your new bank account balance, and maybe it goes cha-ching or something like that. You want to figure out how to get from one side of town to another. Hey, what we're going to do is we're going to give you a really cool, easy to read rendering of how to get there. It's not necessarily turn by turn. It's also not necessarily a mini map anymore either. We've got this really cool hybrid of the two that's going to really help people out. That's the way that we're sort of looking at it, and that's us embracing the limitation of our technology. Who knows, maybe 10 to 20 years out, we can have something like, hey, like a Magic Leap or a Microsoft HoloLens level of immersion, but without the goofy looks. You know, we want people to be able to walk outside and look normal. The next one here is admittedly your last question and the last question of the day. It's a little long, but it's also a little confusing to me too. So I'm gonna do my best to understand this one. So here I am giving it a try. Will a radar system be adapted to your design? Will a radar system to the design for your? Okay, here's what I'm gonna do. He has a last question, and it's a little bit of a strange question. We're gonna answer it anyway. But just know that, Andrew, I've rewritten the question to my best understanding of what you want. So let's get in here. Basically, what he's asking here is, are we going to add some sort of radar or sort of sensing system to the eyewear for maybe people who aren't paying attention, for people who have very limited eyesight, things like that, to sort of help people navigate, basically help people navigate their sort of surroundings. And that starts to be right on that line of, is this a medical device or is it not? When it comes to navigation, we're just all about the low-hanging fruit. We're just trying to get people to look ahead at what they're doing so they don't run over other people, so they don't rear end people because, hey, the phone's here, but the road's there. Or a lot of more and more cars, I should say, are having head-up displays. Head-up displays here, you're there. Your instruments are here, you're there. I think we kind of get the point that you're supposed to be looking there, and all the information that's sort of relevant to are you breaking the law, speeding, going in the right direction, wrong direction, are not in front of you. And that's what we're really trying to get people to do, is just say, here's a task that you're doing sort of ambiently or passively, and these are the sort of ways that we can sort of help you do that in a way that does not cause a lot of distraction. And so with that, that's our last question. This has been another episode of Don't Ask When. Let me know what you guys think. And what we're going to start doing is this. Forget about emailing us questions directly. Just ask questions directly in the comments of either YouTube or Facebook, and we'll pick them up in the next video. It makes a lot less work for me and our team to sort them out from other questions that we have. And with that, that's episode number 8. See you next month on Don't Ask When. This is LaForge Optical. See everything.